Florida Maki, over the last couple of years, you have been regularly harping on this idea of getting trained in psychological operations. Why? We already, of course, know they're trying to manipulate us, but we already have our minds made up about the most important things. So why should we care? You see, that's the trap. It's not just the big things you need to figure out. It's the little things. And in today's video, I'm going to reveal for you why this is so critically important. And there's actually a write-up in the mainstream media about this. Some of you have said, but Florida Maki, we've heard you say good things about Trump and bad things about Trump. We've heard you say good things and bad things about Governor DeSantis. We don't know where you stand. Well, where I stand is this. I judge objectively, day to day, because people change, do they not? For a long time, this man was a Democrat. He said things that would make you believe he's for the Second Amendment, but then he's also came out and said things that would make you believe he wants to take your guns. You never know. So you listen and you judge daily. You don't just make up your mind and move on, thinking you have it all figured out. I followed this guy daily for well over a year and listened to every word out of his mouth because it did sound a little bit too good to be true, but until I heard him say something that was inconsistent, I was going to believe the man for what he said. And when he finally got in bed with, of course, the gay agenda, with that meeting in Orlando with Dave Rubin, that's when I've decided to step back. Now, do I think Charlie Crist is better than him? No. Do I think Joe Biden is better than him? No. But I'm going to be honest and forthright and independent and call a spade when I see it. Over at the Patreon channel, there are specific tools and weapons that you can bring to bear, or you can take somebody that you think is a good choice, but you can put them through these filters and say, wait a minute, hold on. Does this sound right? He says this, but when we apply this tool, this technique, something else appears. And that gives us pause. Because how many times has this happened now where we've believed in somebody and we thought they were the right choice, but then they turned out not to be? You see, there's ways to figure this out now. 24 September. U.S. PSYOPs exposed. Washington isn't concerned about morals. It's worried about getting caught. Pentagon orders urgent review after its global scheme is compromised. Now, nobody's talking about this, of course, but here. This is major news. Bombshell Washington Post investigation has revealed that the Pentagon is conducting a sweeping audit of how it conducts clandestine information warfare after a variety of social media accounts, which its operatives use to target audiences in elaborate psychological warfare efforts, were exposed. The accounts violated platform rules and were eventually busted by researchers and the social networks they weaponized. This is the WAPO article from 19 September. See, I waited. Nobody picked this up. I saw this the day when it came out. I'm like, well, I'm going to wait and see if anybody said anything about this. It's the little things. I'll give you the links to both articles. You see, they got busted by researchers, but they had been busted by counter intel of other countries and had been saying this for a long time, that the U.S. is causing a lot of the heartache and grief and problem across the world. That they're using tactics and techniques to get people to believe things that just aren't true. We've talked about this basic fundamental tenet of persuasion. How do you get somebody to change their mind? How do you get somebody to do something you want them to do? Or not do something you don't want them to do? You have to have a concept of logos, facts, figures, data. You also have to understand that they might be doing it just because you, using your force of personality, encourage them to. Or you can use their feelings against them. You can make them believe that they've been manipulated by somebody else who's actually telling them the truth. When you get a command of this, and then you apply the 24 cognitive biases that everybody falls for, and the 24 logical fallacies that people are very likely to fall for, and you put all this together, you can sound like you are speaking the gospel truth, and it will be 100% lies. Now, here's a good example. And I know this seems like it's completely irrelevant, but it isn't. How many of you have ever known somebody who's had a chinchilla? We had one for quite some time. It's a furry, soft little rodent creature. Now, it's just basically a glorified rat. But if you take a little bowl and you put some really fine volcanic dust in it, it will automatically know to go hop in it and roll around in it. This is how they bathe. It looks like the thing is playing, but it's not. It's actually bathing. Now, how would a rat, number one, know how to bathe? I mean, why can't it just do it like a cat does it? It's a very interesting thing that it instinctively knows, no matter where it is. Because that's the thing would hide in its cage, the one that we had. Had a little home that we had built for it inside the cage. It had wood chips and water and the little runny wheel and all that good stuff. But we would have this little container, and every time we would put it in the cage, out he would come for his bath. Now think about that for just 1 minute. Even rats know to bathe, do they not? Cats know to bathe. They bathe their kittens, they bathe themselves, they bathe almost continually. And when left to their own devices, they will bury their leavings. How did this animal know how to be sanitary? How did this animal, who taught it? Even birds, largely known to be the stupidest animals on the planet, mostly, hence the term bird brain, even they know to bathe. Even they know to bathe. Put out a thing of water. I got one in the backyard. They show up. Even with the tiniest brain-to-body ratios on the planet. Now, humans, largely seen to be the most evolved people on the planet, evolved being, whatever you want to say, on the planet, will forget to bathe, will forget to brush their teeth, will forget to do literally everything to take care of themselves when introduced to one simple little weed. Clearbrook. Treatment centers. Disgusting habits and cosmetic effects of drug addiction. They lose their teeth because they don't brush their teeth. They stop showering because they don't care. They lose their hair because they don't eat. Skin infections, lesions because they don't bathe. They stink to high heaven. No animal would do that. No animal in the world would do that. They don't get addicted to things. Has anybody ever asked why? Why even a rat, basically with big ears and a furry tail, knows to bathe itself. But all it takes is a little bit of weed and a little bit of fire. A little paper to wrap it in, and all of a sudden, mankind, given the most amazing faculties to ponder the universe, to develop art and philosophy and chemistry and biology, and to be able to comprehend all of those things, all it takes is a little bit of weed, a little bit of fire, a little bit of paper, and they won't even bathe themselves. They'll literally let themselves die in search of it. You see, that's going to be one of those things that people don't think about during power down, grid down situations. I'm sure a lot of people are like, you know what? I'd never considered that, Mucky. Why don't animals go out seeking things to get high? Now, I'm sure there's people out there saying, well, have you ever seen a horse eat fermented apples? Well, of course, but he doesn't go seeking that. And catnip is just a randomly occurring thing. But cats don't go looking for it. They sure as heck don't go to the lengths that human beings go to do things that are so wildly self-destructive. See, there's a massive hurricane right now, slamming into Canada. And they're going to be without power. It's going to be grid down. There's going to be lack of sanitation. See, in the first 24 to 48, 72 hours, after a power down, grid down situation, this is going to be the number one concern. For normal people. Let me say this again. For normal, non-drug addicted, non-alcoholic people, this is going to be the number one concern. After 72 hours, with no pumps and no running water and no hot water and no bathing, that's going to be a big deal for a lot of people. But for some people, it won't be any deal at all. They won't care. They will not care. See, a lot of people are stockpiling weapons, stockpiling ammunition, stockpiling food. I mean, some people are smart enough to stockpile toilet paper. But what about the whole running water part of it? Where's the water going to come from? You see, I'll give you this article too about the history of sanitation and how long it took mankind to realize, hey, we need to be more sanitary in how we deal with these things. It got so bad in London in the 1800s that it took killing people from the diseases for them to finally sit down and say, okay, we need to create some type of a sewer system. Tens of thousands died. See, this is a very modern thing. It's a huge thing, though. Some have said, man, I wish I had one of those old Victorian houses out in the middle of nowhere. This is actually the house that they used from the series True Blood that this vampire guy had back during Civil War era. Most of these houses had no indoor plumbing, no place to go to the bathroom. They had these beautiful exteriors, well manicured, and chimneys, and dining rooms, and kitchens where you could cook feasts, and they even had big feather beds, but you had to go outside to go to the bathroom. See, depending on what criterion you would use for healthy, I mean, the U.S. being in a major obesity epidemic, you really wouldn't say the U.S. is the healthiest country in the world. But if you said access to food, access to sanitation, clean water, access to health care, and you used those criteria, and we would be seen as by far the healthiest. So anyway, this is something that when you stop and slowly think about it and not just react, you see things in a very different light. These folks up in eastern Canada have no idea. No idea what a hurricane like this is like. Down here, we're prepared for it. They're not. So you might see issues with sanitation and people not prepared, because it could be quite a long time before they stand things back up. I'm glad this hit now in mid-September and not late October, because late October up there, it's far colder. Far colder, and it would be a lot worse. So, anyway, sometimes you just need to look at things clearly and critically, and not in a way that gives you the solace of saying, okay, I've already made my mind up about this thing. You see, if he actually believed this, biblical marriage, man equals man and a woman, he would have never even entertained the idea of being seen on stage with Dave Rubin. Never. And I guess I'll leave with this point. The Democrat mayor of Palm Beach has now endorsed Governor DeSantis over Charlie Crist. Now, this guy is doing the right thing, but it's going to make him a bunch of enemies in his sphere of people. He's going to be made, out to be some type of a pariah amongst Democrats. But he did what he believed to be the right thing. And kudos to this guy for doing it. Even though I don't agree with the governor on this particular issue with Dave Rubin, and I think it's going to come back to bite him, I do believe that the governor's a better choice than Charlie Crist, for sure. So I'm sure people would accuse him of being as dual-minded as people accuse me of being, simply because I call people out for the mistakes they make and the inconsistencies, for sure. When he was right, I said, yeah, he was right. But when he was really wrong, I said he was really wrong. You have to be able to do that. And the only way you can do that is if you can get control of your mind. And that's all I'm offering at Patreon for $1. That's it. The ability to get control of your mind, locking down your mind to a point where you no longer judge anything critically or independently is not being in control of your mind. It's just not. I mean, if you had decided I'm going to make up my mind about Donald Trump back in the 80s, you would have never voted for him because he was a Democrat. If you had made up about your mind about him in 2015, you would have said, okay, I'm going to stand by him no matter what. And when he came out and said, take the guns first, due process second, you would have had to stand by that. But once again, major investigation into the Pentagon for doing this exact thing, making you believe things that aren't true. Hoping that you won't bother to look into it. You won't reopen your mind and say, wait a minute, hold on. Is this really true or not? Should I really be believing this way or not? Because this is where we get all of our information, for better, for worse. And there's a lot of channels right here on YouTube that I get referred to a lot. People say, you need to check out this channel, Maki. You need to check out that channel, Maki. I have looked at them for about 2 minutes, and I'm like, this is clearly some type of a military psyop channel. If you find yourself being entertained, that's actually a real good key. And I guess I should leave with that. If you find yourself being entertained by information, you need to stop. You need to stop and ask yourself a question. Wait a minute. If you find yourself seeking information about something on the internet and then coming away from that search with some type of a new emotional state, you need to question what was going on. Meaning, if you went to search for something and then it made you extremely angry, and you got very, very angry about what you saw and what you heard, you were probably being manipulated. Or if you come away incredibly happy or high-minded, that they deserve that. That's what's really happening here. That's when you need to watch and step back and take a breath. No search for basic information should ever lead to a change in emotional state. Want to learn how? $1 per month. That's it. Fully refundable first 90 days, the lowest allowable level. Would love to have you. We can go through the basics, step by step, on how to avoid being manipulated. God bless. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you guys next time.